it ended up being really informative and really helpful. As you know, as I hate to use the word tedious they were at some point, but but it felt that way at certain times. But then I always felt really grateful that I did it. And
okay, so if you're going to process record, you're probably process recording something, right?
yes, a client. Yeah.
Okay, so take your interaction with that client and show in the discussion how evidence-based practice would drive what you're doing.
Okay.
So let's say that the client, is an abusive parent. And so you're trying to work with the client so that the client understands why that's not a good idea, other than the general, I know you're not supposed to, but I had to hit him because I needed him to stop doing whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
So, tie what you're doing to evidence-based practice. What would you look up? What would you be trying to find out? How could you use what you're learning about evidence-based practice to inform your interaction and your work with the client? Does that help?
Can I ask you to repeat the question for those of us who got into the class after?
Actually, the question is discussion 3 and how to address it. So the point is, for this discussion, please choose another one of your classes and reflect on an assignment or a topic from that class. So tie the assignment or topic to evidence-based practice, explaining clearly how you would, in facing something related to that assignment or that topic in the real world, use evidence-based practice to inform your choices. So emphasize one of the practice behaviors, and it doesn't have to be research-informed practice and practice-informed research. It can be any of the practice behaviors. Okay?
I had a question, Dr. Walker. I'm actually doing an evidence-based class right now for my internship. Could I use that as part of my learning contract?
Absolutely. The point we're aiming for here, where we're going with this, which might help more than anything else, where we're going with this is, I don't ever, from this moment on, want you to see evidence-based practice as a pointless exercise, because it's not. And that's why we call it practice. That's why we call this a practice class, is because we want you to see that this is something that you can use to make your work with your client better. That applies to every client. If what you have is a client and your supervisor in the agency says, I have never in my life seen anything like this. This is like, oh, you know, he walks only on his hands. Oh, dear. I'll bet you there's one out there. If you have a client behaving in a certain way, it's not the first time, you know? And so I want you to know that utilization of these skills can inform what you're doing. Does that help? Yeah.
Can I maybe just give an example and we can kind of make sure I'm going on the right direction? So I have a patient that we have talked with, kind of with the nursing staff and amongst us, the dietitian, the social worker, and we're all noticing that he's a very smart man. He's highly educated, but he seems to have a hard time processing what we're talking about. So we're not sure if he's, you know, having some, memory problems, or if he is uremic from the dialysis, which means confused. So to tie this to that class, would I maybe look up, how would I tie that to EBP, say with that specific client?
Okay. So in Amy's case, we have a client, right? We know that this client is the client that we're thinking about working with. And so when we get to question formulation, which is very specific and it's coming right up, what we're going to do, sorry about the cat, what we're going to do is we're going to want to look up how to work with that kind of client. So Amy's not going to put how do I help Jane Callan into Google, but she is going to put how do I help a male renal patient with these symptoms, adolescent male, young adult male, elderly man, put in another demographic, put in Hispanic, put in, Orthodox Jew, whatever it is that allows you to narrow it down. Then you may get 0 hits, in which case you, of course, back up, right? Take out something. So, yes, that's an absolutely excellent example. You want to tell us how you would use evidence-based practice to help that client.
Thank you.
Does that help? Before I go any further, I put it like a announcement somewhere and said, I'm going to put these on YouTube because I can't figure out mechanically how to do it the other way. It worked really well in spring and now it doesn't work at all. And IT's just like, but if it bothers, if you don't want to show up, like I just used Jane's name and I probably shouldn't have, but
It's okay.
your names don't show up on what goes on YouTube, but your faces do. So if you're not okay with that, tell me, I'll stop it. I'll start it right back up and you can take your face off, right? Okay. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Beth Walker YouTube channel is not exactly going to have 1 million hits. But, it might have 70, which is how many people are in 640 total. So, everybody might want to look at it. So did we kind of cover this assignment, this discussion?
So again, I wasn't there for the first minute. So this is the one we just turned in on Sunday, because that about 2.1.6, where we were sort of delving into 2.1.6 and then mapping that.
No, this one's not due till September 3rd.
Oh, good. I was going to say I was way off base because that's not at all what I understood it to be. Okay. All right. Good.
This is discussion 3. And I should apologize for the fact that these things are named very weirdly and they're interspersed like in the wrong order. But it's how I think of them. So like to me, assignment 2 is question formulation, no matter what order it's in. And so I can't really change its name inside my head. So this is discussion 3 and it's due September 3rd. And it is focused on, and this is where we benefit from, and this also ties into your signature assignment, because what we're going to be looking at is how do you do this in real life? How does research inform practice and practice inform research, right? So that's the point of what we try to accomplish in this class. So, any other questions about this guy? All right. Assignment 1. the major content assignment. This is the last thing of the assignment. I mean, the only one of the assignments really that doesn't have much at all to do with the signature assignment. This is more like, did everybody bring your dictionary to class? You know, for the 3rd grade. This is the terminology we're going to use throughout what we're doing. So even though you're all grown-ups, we're just going to kind of zip through this. So answer the questions below. And I'm going to suggest to you, as I've done before, if you really want to make sure you cover everything, take the words in the rubric, make them into a sentence, use more words, thus the dictionary, and then go back and pick up some more of the rubric. It also works to pull stuff out of the assignment, which is what I'm fixing to go over with you. Discuss internal validity and distinguish it from external validity. Despite the fact they're both called validity, they are very different. So I want you to be able to tell me what the difference is. I want you to be able to differentiate them. Provide an example of each, and I hope by now you've figured out that your author is kind of a funny guy. You know, he has some off-the-wall examples. Feel free to do that. Make stuff up. Touch on time order, correlation. Correlation does not imply causation, right? Everybody's with me there? Yes. Plausible alternatives, history, maturation, and regression to the mean. The point is that by the time this assignment is scored and you do well, I need to know that you understand each of those things in a very basic level. This is not a stats class. You know, this is just the building blocks for what we're going to be looking at. Address why measurement validity matters. So, for example, this is where a really silly example could come into play. Tell me what might happen if you were looking at some research and it didn't have measurement validity. Like a really silly example, and then I'll come back to whoever was making a noise, but a really silly example could be, let's say you're going to compare tow trucks and Ferraris in terms of speed off the line at the racetrack. Seriously? What good would that be? You know, I mean, we all know the Ferrari's going to be much faster unless there's something wrong with the Ferrari. But you need to think about it in that context. You need not to try to compare those two things, but you need, now see, you can't use that example. You need to give me an example that makes sense to you. Now, somebody was going to say something. Y'all are just populating all over this screen.
Basically, it has to meet the most basic standards for statistical significance, right?
Significance, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Dr. Walker, just real quick, please. In the modules, are we going to work in the modules? We go from week 3 to week 8. So 4, 5, 6, and 7 are missing.
I'm sure that is a function of the idiot who hasn't opened them yet. And the problem is there are 6 sections. And so, you know, the UPS guy comes to the door and all of a sudden Somebody's section doesn't get open for that. I will open it, them, whatever the problem is. I'll go back and open it all. Now, the penalty you pay for that is there may be something, a date in there I haven't fixed right. This 6 sections is insane. You know, it's like I have to do every single thing identically 6 times. And always before, I have put you all into one shell. And it worked beautifully because I only had to do it one time and I only had to open stuff one time. Turns out that's a FERPA violation because you're not necessarily supposed to know who else is in another 640. Now, you're all in here tonight and some of you aren't in the same section, but and I'll go, it'll be tomorrow, but I will go. And the other thing I won't do is I won't penalize you for something that's late because I messed around and didn't get it open. I mean, I would never do that. You have to trust me on that, okay? And you'll see that I wouldn't do it. Somebody emailed me and they're like, I don't think that's open. But I was traveling last week and I couldn't fix what I was supposed to fix. So we'll get there. I promise. Okay, the next piece of the assignment, describe your understanding of statistical conclusion validity. And some of this stuff, if you haven't read it yet, that's okay. You have no clue what it means, right? You will. And then the next one is your understanding of regression to the mean. And by that I mean, don't give me a textbook definition. I want to know that you understand what happens with regression to the mean. And he's good. Your author's good at explaining that stuff. But if you're confused, hold on a minute. Let me give you a website. Yeah. Okay, it's an atrocious URL. Everybody ready? It's www. Social Research Methods, all run together, socialresearchmethods.net. And it has a search box, and almost anything that I have given you as an assignment, that thing isn't funny at all. I mean, it's just basic, but it will clarify for you what the terms mean. And it does a pretty good job of it, I think. Again, it's not as funny as your author, but provide examples, but not so close to the author that I think you not exactly plagiarized it, but, you know, picked up his paragraph and didn't really know what statistical conclusion validity was, and so you sort of tried. I will catch it. I mean, that's almost a given. So, those of you who had me for research methods in 540 and maybe research project undergraduate, though I don't think anybody in here was in that case, but we'll find the next section way too easy, but answer it anyway. Does correlation imply causation? Why or why not? If you say causal instead of causal, you will learn that you will lose more points. Come on, people, this is graduate school. Or you can watch that clip from Jon Stewart. Now, hold on a minute, because I test this clip before I open the module, but sometimes it goes away after I get the thing open.
Professor Walker, I'm sorry to interrupt. I had a little trouble getting on. Could you explain what assignment you're describing? Great notes I'm taking. I just don't know what it applies to.
Right now we're talking about assignment 1. It's called major content assignment. Oh, this breaks my heart. It's disappeared again. Okay, so I will have to find it because it's just perfect. I mean, that is a perfect clip. It's Neil deGrasse Tyson explaining causation and correlation to Jon Stewart, and it's hysterical. And it worked in August. I promise it did. But I will work on it. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson makes a cultural competence boo-boo that's really funny. And then talk about blind raters and blind rating. It's almost like a blind taste test where they give you Coke or Pepsi and see if you can figure it out. And how might you make that happen in your practice? Then there's some things in here about like the TED Talk and the Freakonomics guys. They are really fun if you haven't ever paid attention to them.
Welcome. I came here today to warn you about the dangers of ice cream. You may not be aware of this, but
I think I've hit the
cones full of sweetness
video
are one of the major causes of drownings. And I've got the numbers to prove it.
This is a cute clip, but give me a break, thing.
And you compare it with the number of drownings, you can see there is clearly an upwards trend. And I think it's very safe to conclude from this
there it
that
is.
you should ban ice cream because it's very dangerous.
Okay.
Since you're all smart people, you probably figured out there's something wrong with my example.
Okay. I can kill them both, and I did. So I think you'll appreciate those clips. They're really cute. You'll find 1,000 graphic examples of why correlation doesn't imply causation. I mean, it'll be like car wrecks in Berlin and chocolate ice cream like she was talking about. But they're cute, but you need to understand the concept. Okay? Now, I will get that back open, but without YouTube. So, what does that help you with assignment 1?
Yes, Dr. Walker, I have an additional sort of a technical question.
Okay.
You want us to use APA, the format for the paper, and do you want an abstract for each of these assignments?
No, just the final one.
Okay, okay,
We don't need an abstract for all of them, no.
okay, thank you.
I don't have the assignment pulled up in front of me. How many pages is this supposed to be?
I don't think I said.
Okay, so we can take as much as we need because that's quite
Yes.
a bit of information.
I don't ever count off if it's too long.
Okay, and then how about, do you want us writing this in first person or how do you like that?
That's an excellent question. Some points, it's almost unavoidable to have first person. Others, if you can avoid it, do. I'm not a big fan of this author says, meaning yourself, 12 times in a paragraph. But sometimes you just need to have first person because that's what you're talking about. You know, you're talking about how you understand it, and that's okay. When I talk about the need for consistent use of APA throughout all of your papers, primarily I'm talking about the margins, the spacing, the reference page looking and being correct, because right here is a printer. I'll print it up and I will measure those margins. I swear I will. So just be careful that you don't try to put something over on me. Not that any of you would, but you know, it's been known to happen. What else do you want to know about anything we've just talked about?
On just going back to the question about assignments being available and visible online, it sounded, if I understood correctly, it sounded like you have the power to do that.
I do.
And perhaps we'll do that in the near term?
Real near term, I would say tomorrow. And I would know I could do it tomorrow, except for the part where I was sitting out in the garden about an hour ago and I thought to myself, I think I have a dental appointment tomorrow. And so I called the dentist and they went, you confirmed 8 o'clock in the morning. Ooh. So if they don't hurt me, you know, I should have plenty of time to do it.
Okay.
If they hurt me and I have a baby mouth, if they hurt me, it may take a little longer. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go open them. So if there's something weird in there, I may not have tested it. You know, I may not have tested whatever it is out. So just be patient with me and know that I will return the favor. But yes, it's my fault that they're not, the ones that aren't open.
I just had a kind of housekeeping question, which you guys might have already covered that, but just wondering about responses and original posts. So normally it's like 250 words for original posts, which none of us have a problem meeting, and then 150 for like a response to appear. Is that the same kind of guidelines, or are you looking for something more, or?
No, that will probably work. This is the part, though, where you begin to get really irritated with me because I'm not going to tell you, you know, the specifics. I don't count words. I want to make sure you do the responses, but I'm not going to do that. On your final paper, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be longer than the requirement by the time we get there, through no fault of yours. You know, you're going to do each piece, and then when you put it together, you're going to go, oh, that is the most gorgeous chocolate cake I ever made, because it's going to be really nice. But you got to use the right flour, and you got to use the right sugar, and you got to use the right cocoa. You know, you got to have the right ingredients, and those ingredients are these smaller assignments.
And if I remember correctly, you said this assignment isn't the assignment that you link with all the other ones, the first one.
This assignment 1 does not address that. It's just to get you, like with the dictionary, the same terminology, so that everybody knows what a certain term of those core terms that are in this assignment, what they mean.
So, Dr. Walker, this, by the way, I haven't ever had you, but you cracked me up. So that's just a little side note. But so I'm understanding what I'm getting from this is that this isn't going to be like a research project.
No, not at all. You are exactly right.
So we're going to actually, because I went and looked at the what's the family's name?
The Sanchez's.
Yeah, I went there and pulled that up and looked at all the, so we're just going to have a client and we're going to, this paper is really more about an intervention on a client, right? Am I getting that right? Kind of, sort of?
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
How I'd like for you to think of it would be in the context of using research to help your client. That's why it's a practice class. But the idea is it's not so much that we're going to focus on how to do the intervention, but what we're going to focus on, and this is why you're going to be really cranky by the end of October, we're going to focus on how to figure out how to help the client. When we talked, Amy talked about her client, we're going to look at the client and we're going to see how best to help the client based on those 3 pieces of evidence-based practice. So the research, right? And then what else?
The client values and goals.
What client values, what the client's willing to do.
And then on experience.
Our experience, our gut feeling about this thing. Do we think this is going to work? And your gut feeling about whether this intervention is going to work or not may have more to do with, yes, this is something you've read about and you think it would be worth trying with your client, but your supervisor and there's no way on earth your supervisor is going to sign off on it. So you just might as well work on something else, right? So yes, those are the 3 things. And mostly what I need to do is make sure that you understand how to look the stuff up.
Okay. And so typically this kind of assignment stresses me out to the max, and I'm trying to follow your lead, and I'm trying to pick up on your ease about it all, and I'm trying to trust you, but I don't know you.
Well,
and,
that's fair.
Yeah, and I'm trying to believe in the fact that if I do my best, I ask questions when I don't know, along with your feedback, that I'm going to be okay at the end of this thing.
Yes.
All right.
Christina, you're killing me. Oh, man. It's like spoken right out of my head. I have to tell you that.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Sarah, you're going to have to unmute.
I just said, yes, I agree. Because I'm very nervous and research is not my forte.
Yeah, mine either.
I'm very nervous and research is my forte.
It's your forte, so yeah.
Okay.
I will also tell you, because you would figure it out and I'm just going to save you some time. You're going to want to talk to each other a lot and then send one of you to me, and say, well, we've been talking about this and we sort of thought maybe you could answer this for us. We don't know. And then the one that got, sent into the lion's den can go back and tell the others what the answer is. And I will also tell you, I've never in my entire life bitten the head off a student. Never. One of the cartoons in this course, and I don't know whether it made it to the syllabus this time or not, but it says, when the teacher says there are no dumb questions, she doesn't really mean, is Bubbles a good name for my new turtle? You might want to stick with questions that relate. But they can be as basic as they get. I'm not expecting you guys to understand this stuff. This stuff is hard. It is. And I also do absolutely insist on it being APA. You give me a single-spaced reference page.
So, like what you were describing to me reminds of our whole final assignment is so my dad is an LMSW as well.
Good.
And my brother has his BSW, and I know I didn't get to see the first class. I mean, I watched it on YouTube, but I wasn't here. So a little bit of my background. My sister has her degree in baking. She went to Johnson & Wales Culinary Institute in Denver. But she works at a residential treatment center as an admin. She does payroll, auditing, things like that. So we're kind of all in the field in some way, shape, or another. But, a lot of people think, well, your dad, already did this. He gives you the answers. No, my dad will tell me how to get to the answer. He will never, ever give me an answer. So, I think it's one of those things of once it's the end of it, you have that degree of knowing I did it on my own. I didn't have any, no one did it for me. But that's exactly like what, to me, and I don't know if I'm right or not, of making sure we know how to get to the answers.
Exactly, Melissa, exactly. And what I was sitting there thinking when you were talking was he probably makes a really good social worker, because my inclination is to say, Amanda's my client, and good Lord, girl, if you would just quit messing around with those drugs, you'd be so much better off. Well, I know better now, but my inclination is always to be really directive. Are you serious? You're letting them watch that on TV? That kind of thing. So what you won't get from me is directiveness in this class, except formatting of your paper. You'll get a lot of directiveness on that because that is a given. It's a standard expectation. What else? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Who is
statistically, people, Courtney? So I'm not trying to be funny here, but statistically, people survive this class, right?
Statistically, they do. Yes.
I mean, I am with you so much, Christina, that I'm trying not to have trying to talk myself down from the cliff right now.
Yes. People do survive this class. The people who most successfully and with the least stress survive this class are the ones. So is Lauren still here? Okay. So unmute and tell them how many times we've talked today.
About 3 times.
Okay, right? That is a really important thing. If you aren't in my phone by your name, you are likely to be. But if you're not in my phone by your name, I may not answer, but I will respond to a text and I will listen to a voicemail and call you back. I had this really weird problem with spam calls. I mean, really terrible. And so the message says something like, I've had trouble with, phone calls on this line, leave a message. But now my phone says, Lauren. It actually says Jane. And I don't think any of the others of you are in there by name yet. Christina might be.
Dr. Walker, you've got 70 students, you said, in 640. Yes. So if 70 students were, contacting you 3 times a day.
Okay, so see,
that would be 210 touches every single day. So I'm just thinking.
See, there's our math girl. Okay, so that's one reason that I was suggesting that you might want to talk to each other and send an envoy to ask the question and then go back and share it with the rest of the class. And that works really well. But I'm also very good on text. Well, Melissa's in my phone. It goes really, I mean, I'm really good on texts. I'm very happy to answer, you know, if it's something you can just text the question. I'm very busy. Many of you will have encountered that. But on the other hand, I do get back with you, and we do get it solved. Amy, you and I have interacted.
And you're okay with texting? That's a good way to.
Oh, yeah, texting is the best.
Okay, good.
Texting is the best for me, especially with that weird phone problem. It's way better now. And so I'm hoping that like by January, I can answer that phone again. I just don't want to give up this phone number. I've had it forever. Okay, I want to spend just a couple of minutes because on assignment 2, which is question formulation. And that is at the heart of evidence-based practice. So knowing how to formulate or structure your questions is crucial. So when I was trying to put Amy's client into context for what we were doing earlier, I mentioned demographics, you know, I mentioned symptomatology perhaps. So what you're going to want to do in assignment 2, which is going to build the main thing you're doing. So use at least 3 sources for how to formulate questions. Your textbook, right? There are articles in the assignment on how to formulate questions. And then one that you figure out by looking it up. There's always Google Scholar, there's Miller Library. There's 1,000 places to get good information. What is one, anybody who's ever had me before, what is one that is not a good place?
Google.com.
Google Scholar's okay.
Just regular Google.com.
Regular Google, I would not suggest.
Wikipedia.
There you go. Wikipedia gets you in trouble. You can certainly use Wikipedia as a jumping off point, right? Wikipedia may have references at the bottom that are perfectly fine. But if you've ever seen the Stephen Colbert clip where he goes in and edits his own webpage at Wikipedia while you're watching and makes himself like King of France and a girl. I mean, he makes all these weird edits while you're watching. You'd understand my strong resistance to Wikipedia. So then you're going to want 4 sources for how to carry out whatever it is you're thinking about using. So you've got to be thinking about what you're going to do with your client by the time you get to this assignment. And it's due September 17th. So you have a little while. But what you're going to be doing, you're going to be looking at what you might want to do to help your client. But yeah, Amy.
Are you speaking intervention-wise? Yes. What we might, so
exactly.
If we're not going to use the Sanchez family, say we want to use a client from where we're at, we need to have that client identified because we have to have that information in the back of our head.
Yes, and you're going to use that information to inform your question formulation.
Okay.
Because you're going to want it to be specific enough to get information out of whatever the source that you want to use is.
Are we actually formulating our questions, or are we just more talking about how to formulate?
Well, the first part of this assignment is the how to.
Okay.
So these are good examples, and you're going to find Campbell, the Campbell collaboration, and Cochrane is the other one in here somewhere. Campbell and Cochrane are 2 exceptional choices to help you help your client. They have an amazing database. I mean, it's just the coolest database of stuff. They're complex, and they're not going to say things like hand your client a crayon. I mean, it's complex, but it's also very useful. So also within the assignment, it suggests you look at your textbook, but then Campbell, and then there's 2 Campbell pieces actually. And then there's an excellent picture on evidence-based research, clinical expertise, the patient values is what they call it here. And EBP is right there in the middle. Small. There's several things in here that are very helpful. PICO is a way to go about this in formulating your research question. The problem or the person or the population, what is it you want to know about? The problem. Then the intervention you might use. You may find an intervention that you just think is the coolest thing there is, and it doesn't work at all. You look it up and they go, oh, no. It broke the leg of everybody that ever tried it. You know, I mean, it just might not work at all. Then the comparison. So you're going to compare it to other clients in a similar situation. And then the outcome, of course. Because what are we aiming for, right? We're aiming to help who? Most of you, it'll be Sanchez, right? But it'll be a client. And again, as I mentioned last week, it can be a macro situation. It's just harder. And you'll want to talk to me soon if it's going to be macro.
Professor, I wrote down what you said about the 4 sources to carry out what you're going to do with the client, but I'm just wondering, those 4 sources, are you talking like for research articles, for what do the sources mean? Yes,
articles. You'll find a lot of things at Campbell, you'll find a lot of things at Cochrane, and that is, I don't know why it's not on here, but it's spelled Cochrane. And if you put in Cochrane Social Work Research, you'll get their site right away. No question about that. So yes, Courtney, what we're looking for is how to help the client, and you will find some options at almost any of these things you search for. I can tell you right now, many of you will think CBT is it. You know, you've heard it in your clinical classes. It seems like you can solve pretty much anything with it. I get a little bored reading about it, but I don't care. I mean, it's okay if it fits your client.
So we're picking 1 intervention and 4 sources to back that intervention.
Not necessarily 1 at this point. You can have more than 1.
Okay.
You can explore more than 1.
And
by 6 weeks from now, by 5 weeks from now, you're going to be down to 1. That's what you're going to want to focus on that. But right now, you might explore more than 1. You might do PICO on 2 of them. You know, PICO is a really good technique, and you're going to see it a lot, and it's in your textbook. And sometimes it has there's a T on the end of it, and for the life of me, I can't remember what the T is right now, but you'll find this really useful as you look at what you're going to do with a client.
So when you're talking about our second paper, though, that is the 6 weeks down the line where you're doing the 1 intervention that you're talking about with the 4 sources to back that intervention.
Yeah. Here, you're very likely to want to do more than 1.
Is our feedback pretty quick, so we kind of understand if we're like going way off in the wrong direction and we need to come back and rein it back in another direction? Are we pretty tight with that on the grading schedule, or how do we know we're on the right path with these assignments?
There's 2 answers to that.
Okay.
The first one is, I would really like to think so, but I can't promise it. I'll do my best. I'm better now than I was 3 years ago. But the second answer is actually my favorite. And that is that when you write this paper, so the rubric for this paper is use 3 sources for how to formulate the question, 4 sources for how to carry out whatever the practice is. I still have this rubric upside down, by the way. The third row is now identify the intervention, and it really ought to be the other way around. Then the reference page and the in-text citations are APA. Including spelling and grammar. Do it right. Then you get even more points for APA format because somebody else built this rubric and I had told her to go back and add an APA row to every rubric. She didn't pay attention to the fact that this one had an APA line in it. So you're lucky, you just get extra points. Then the actual questions are the questions that you will formulate. And a minute ago, I gave you what felt at the time like a really good example with Amy's client. You know, you're going to want demographics. You're not going to want to, as I said then, you're not going to want to say, how can I help Jane Callan? Because Google Scholar's not going to know Jane Callan is not going to know what's wrong with her. You know, you need to be able to do the demographics, whether it's drugs, whether it's one of the Sanchez's is hard of hearing. One of them is exploring his sexuality. You want to put those things in there to construct your questions. And these sources and this assignment will show you exactly what those are. I mean, it really will. This assignment will really show you that.
So it has to be generic enough to conform to a Boolean search. Basically.
Yes, Boolean is the exact point. It has to be generic enough to do that so that it has to know what you're looking for broadly. Now, you may go too broad, and when you get, 4,000 responses, well, you're going to have to narrow it down some. You're going to have Hispanic male rather than Hispanic teenager, to narrow. So where I was going with my answer a minute ago to Amy was, the second thing besides my feedback is that once you do this and you do it right and you follow the rubric, in most cases, for most of you, it feels right. And if it feels right, it probably is. And if it doesn't feel right, what did we agree a minute ago you would do?
Contact you.
Contact you.
Yep. Yes, yay. Oh, I love this. Yes, exactly. So, you can say, well, I was trying to figure out an intervention, and it seemed like to me a smallpox vaccination might be the way to go. Well, probably not. Probably not. I mean, where most of us are going to be in behavioral health, right, in some way, that's probably not going to solve it. So ask me, am I going down the right road there? I don't think so. Let's talk about it.
Do you think it's a good idea to use one of the Sanchez family members?
It's easier.
Okay.
But if you're interested, if you're particularly interested in a client at your field placement or the agency where you work, that's fine. We'll make it work.
No,
if you looked at the Sanchez's at all, the stuff is laying there like a case file. So it's kind of handy, I guess.
Okay.
And one of the Sanchez's is probably going to appeal to you as a client.
Okay.
I have a question. So for the assignment, is it going to be more difficult if a client, I'm thinking about a client that I'm working with right now, the more challenges that this person is facing, is it going to be more difficult?
No. In fact, it may be easier.
Oh, okay.
It may be easier.
And can you clarify for me? I believe you said that if we need to add some detail to a Sanchez, like to answer some questions, make it up. Okay, that's what I thought.
Tell me what you made up so I'll know the context we're working in. But yeah.
If we do decide to use like a patient that we have our client right now, would we need to give you a background history, like a biopsychosocial? Yeah. Okay.
You can make it a fairly narrow one. I mean, it doesn't have to be much in depth.
But just so you
know.
I'll
probably ask you a question. You know, like if you say that you decided one of the recommendations you were going to make was that his parents paint his room blue, I might want to know why. You know, what in the case that I don't know about led you to that choice.
And you said kind of multiple comorbidities would be okay to have?
Multiple, yes, and may make it even easier because it narrows your defining down.
Okay, good.
It is 6:57. I'm so proud of you guys. This is amazing. Wonderful questions. Just wonderful questions. I just love doing this. This is so much fun. So here's what I'm going to do. When you all say goodbye, I'm going to stop recording, and then I'm going to let it convert. And then it may take too long to convert tonight, but tomorrow, after I get back from the dentist, I'll put it into YouTube and get it into the classes. Okay? And there'll be just a few minutes at the beginning that aren't recorded because I forgot. But not many. I caught it pretty quick. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a lovely holiday Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Melissa?
Good night.
Melissa?
Professor, I just had one thing I wanted to ask you whenever they go.
Melissa, I'm sorry, real quick. You say you're in Tucson, right?
Yeah.
I'm also in Tucson. My practicum is at Pathways of Arizona.
Oh, I'm working with Tina Lamarck, who is has her own practice.
So two Melissas at the same town. That's cool.
And I'm not from here. I'm actually from Albuquerque. I grew up in New Mexico my whole life. I just recently moved here. But I've been here for 2 years. And so it was cool. Like I said, I watched the video, so I heard you say that. So I was pretty excited. Well, we'll have to figure out getting together maybe.
Okay.
Have a good night, everyone.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm sticking around for somebody, Melissa? Courtney. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
They get progressively bigger. Bye, Andy. Okay. Hi.
Hi. So it's the